For my first 2 fall gardens, I followed the advice that pretty much everybody gives, which is to figure out the number of days to your first frost and then look at the days to maturity on your seed packets. And if the days to maturity is less than the days to your first frost, then you are totally fine to plant those things. But then a lot of those plants just never matured. They were really scrawny. Things like cauliflower and broccoli just never formed heads. So I tried to figure out what was going on and found that there are 4 factors that really matter, especially the farther north you are, to having a good fall garden. The biggest thing that I didn't understand is that the days to maturity on a seed packet are often from transplant, not from the day that you plant the seed. For things like cauliflower, for example, even though I have 65 days left in my growing season and cauliflower say that they take about 60 days to mature, if I sowed that seed right now, then most likely I would end up in the same situation where the plants are really small and they don't really ever produce anything. So about 4 weeks ago, I actually started a bunch of cauliflower, broccoli, and cabbage inside so that it would be ready to plant out around August 5th because my first frost date is October 5th. Almanac.com is an awesome resource. You can just put in your zip code and it will give you a personalized planting calendar for when you need to start things inside and when you need to direct sow things outside or transplant outside. Even once I understood the timing, I just didn't trust those dates because you think that if you put heat-sensitive plants out, especially when it's over 100 degrees, they are just immediately going to bolt. And what I wasn't understanding is that you do have to provide a little bit of protection, whether that is interplanting, using shade cloth or burlap, or even for direct sown plants using mulch or that shade cloth to cool down the soil so that germination can happen. Some things like lettuce and spinach are a lot more prone to bolting, so I'm waiting until about 30 days before my last frost to get those going. But for those things that take a little bit longer, like cauliflower or broccoli or cabbage, heading into shorter days, cooler temperatures is going to really help them not bolt. And that brings me to the third thing that I really wasn't understanding, and that is the farther north you are, the more dramatically your daylight hours are going to shrink and plants grow slower when there isn't as much light. This is one of those things that makes me wish that we didn't focus so much on growing zones in the gardening world, because my experience as a Zone 7 gardener in Boise, Idaho is so dramatically different from the experience of a Zone 7 gardener in Lubbock, Texas. The angle of the sun also changes when you're heading into fall, so places in my garden that get quite a bit of light in the spring don't get very much light when you're in fall and winter. So for this reason, depending on how far north you are, I would add a couple of extra weeks to those days to maturity. Every year around this time, I get a little sad because I feel like I have such a short growing season. It's 150 days, which I know is a lot longer than some people, but it just goes by so fast. But the fourth thing that I really didn't understand before is that you can actually extend that growing season with some really simple and affordable tools. Sometimes your first frost happens, but then it's really beautiful weather for another couple of weeks. So if you have veggies growing that will get killed by a frost, as long as they can fit under a frost blanket, this can save your harvest basically. And a lot of plants actually can survive down to about 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and the flavor even improves on some of them because they create a natural antifreeze that tastes good to us. I am constantly looking for ways to get more out of the other 200 days of my year where frost is an issue. So this year I'm going to try creating some cold frames or little plastic low tunnels and see if I can get even more out of these garden beds. There are also a ton of things that you can do in the fall to help your spring garden get a head start, and I'm working on that video now, so once it's ready, it will show up here.